Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
We'll talk about the economy in the Acadiana region when Troy Wayman, President and CEO of One Acadiana, joins us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
At Optimal, we understand what's at stake during your projects. That's why we value integrity, trust, and expertise. We retain proven and experienced craftsmen, and with multiple locations, we can execute hundreds of customized project solutions across the country, so you stay ahead of schedule and under budget. At Optimal, you come first, plain and simple. We have your back, and we always deliver. Experience the Optimal difference.
Are you a licensed contractor? There's lots of good contractors in Louisiana doing work the right way, but unfortunately, too many unlicensed contractors are working outside the licensing requirements. Working as a contractor in Louisiana requires a license for the company doing the work. The Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors wants to help you get licensed to allow you to conduct work legally. It's not difficult to get the license. We can help you. Go to lacontractor.org for more information. Licensed contractors, it's the law.
For 8 seconds in the arena before an afternoon in the field. For a promise to students that honors success in the classroom. For championships earned on the bayou. For innovators committed to reclaiming our coastline. The Universities of Louisiana. For your future. For our future.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined by Troy Wayman. He's the president and CEO of One Acadiana, the regional economic development organization in the greater Lafayette area. Troy, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. It's good to be here.
Glad you are. Let's start, Troy, with give us an overview of how you and your team are coping with this crisis, the quarantine, the stay-at-home order. How are you staying productive?
Well, we've been at home now for over a month, as most people have been. And I tell you, I'm extremely proud of the team that we have at One Acadiana because they have pivoted quickly. We initially put together a series of webinars to help our businesses kind of understand the new playing ground, the new rules, so to speak. And we've done 6 of those so far. We finished up one on Tuesday of this past week, on the tourism industry, the impacts that this is having on the tourism industry. And we had the Lieutenant Governor with us, and those have gone extremely well. We've had anywhere from 200 to 400 people join us on those webinars. We've also had to put together some resources, and we put together a website, a resource guide, so that people can kind of have a one-stop shop where they could go and look at the different things that are available. One of the things that we found is people have been inundated with information. And I will say that maybe not all of it is as accurate as it could be. So we took it upon ourselves to kind of aggregate and vet that information and make sure that the information that we were providing our members and partners and investors was as accurate as at all possible. And the other challenge that we're facing on that is this information is changing daily. So making sure that we're keeping it up to date, keeping that information relevant has been a significant challenge, and also making sure that we're staying in touch with our members, investors, and partners across the region because people are hungry for ways to engage. They don't, a lot of folks, including ourselves at times, are feeling a little lost, and so we're wanting to make sure that we're there as a support mechanism as well for those businesses.
It's been a difficult time for most all businesses across the state, and trying to find ways to stay productive and stay engaged, I know, is something that you've been focused on. As we tape this, Troy, on Tuesday morning, we saw what I thought I would never see yesterday, and that is oil prices literally went to $0 per barrel. I know how dependent, how important the oil and gas industry is to the Acadiana region. You guys that industry had already been reeling from the last few years. We'd finally gotten oil back up to about $60 a barrel in a range where folks could begin to come back and be profitable. This is going to have a devastating effect, I know. Talk about that from your perspective.
Yeah, Tim, it's a great point. And, in truth, I never thought I would ever see it trading actually below zero. Right. It was a situation at one point, it hit as low as minus $36 a barrel, which, in essence, people would be paying me to store it in my garage. And this region has long since been incredibly dependent on the oil and gas sector. It's been incredibly good to Acadiana. And truthfully to Louisiana as a whole. So these kind of things are a real, a real hit in the pit of the stomach. As you mentioned over the past few weeks, you had the glut in oil supply that was caused by Saudi Arabia and Russia, and an attempt to somehow manipulate the market, and it was working. And so the oil prices were already declining. Well, then you couple that with the 1-2 punch of this COVID-19 crisis, where people aren't driving. I saw someone the other day made a comment on Facebook trying to be funny, but to those of us in Acadiana, it's not particularly humorous when they say, my car's getting 3 weeks to a gallon. Yeah. And so people aren't driving. And so that's the supply is high, demand is low. It doesn't take a true economist to figure out that that's a recipe for disaster for the pricing on oil. I've always said that the people in this region are extremely resilient. It's probably a term that we've had to use too many times, unfortunately. But we are resilient people, and we've bounced back from this sort of thing before. Maybe not this bad. We haven't seen it hit this bad. But the trials and tribulations that we've gone through in the past in the oil and gas industry have helped some of these companies realize how much and what they need to do to prepare for this kind of thing. Now, again, I don't know that anyone has seen this, but we've already seen it rebound a little bit this morning, not a significant amount. I'm hoping that number continues to rise. We're at least back into positive figures on the trading per barrel. So what the future holds on that, we don't know. Companies have already had to figure out ways to pivot their industries and figure out how to adapt to the current way of doing business. And this is just going to further cause them to pivot. We're doing a number of things trying to help some of these people that may be displaced through this in the oil and gas sector. We've done it in the past, where we've tried to retool that workforce and get them into another industry sector. And so we're continuing to do those efforts with our 2-year college system and our 4-year college system and other training institutions to make sure that we're helping people find jobs, because that's what's important right now.
You guys had already been working on a lot of effort to diversify the economy and, as you say, look to help those folks be placed in other positions and maybe be retrained to a certain degree. But the only way that I think, and we'll talk about this more later in the show, Troy, but the only way we really recover from an oil and gas perspective is to get this economy back open. And as you say, get people driving their automobiles again and consuming. That's the real key factor here, isn't it?
Absolutely. We've got to go back to work. As a region, as a state, as a nation, we've got to go back to work. And, if we're capable of going to the grocery store, going to Home Depot and Lowe's and those places and able to do that safely, we can go back to work safely as long as we follow certain guidelines. We've been working with BRAC. BRAC has been working on some things, and we're kind of copying some of the work that Adam and his team are doing. But we signed on to a recommendation they sent to the governor with LBIS that basically says, hey, let's go back. Let's change it from stay at home to safe at work, stay at home. We recognize there's some that still need to stay at home. But for the most part, we've got to be safe at work.
I want to talk a little bit more, Troy, about this whole idea of reopening the economy and that difficult conversation about how we protect the most vulnerable. Let's take a break. We'll do that when we come back. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
Welcome to Southwest Louisiana. 5 parishes working hand in hand to provide economic development, opportunity, and quality of life. $43 billion in projects underway, $65 billion in the pipeline, 18,000 construction workers, and 18,000 permanent jobs. It's all here. Welcome to Opportunity, the Southwest Louisiana Alliance.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
Gulf Coast Bank and Trust is giving our customers the power to bank anywhere, anytime during this challenging time.
It's about doing the right thing for our customers.
We're right there with you. Gulf Coast Bank is invested in technology with a local touch, a smart way to manage your money and your time. With our mobile banking app, you can make deposits, check balances, transfer money, pay bills, and more. Gulf Coast Bank and Trust, the bank that cares about you. Member FDIC. Message and data rates may apply.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Troy Wayman, President and CEO of One Acadiana, is our guest. Troy, at the end of the last segment, we started this conversation relative to restarting the economy. Obviously, we've got to do that with compassion. We've got to be careful. We've got to be smart. But the longer this goes, the more I wonder legitimately if the fix is going to be worse than the disease itself. And I think that's a legitimate conversation to have. You started talking about that a little bit at the end of the last segment. Complete your thought there.
Tim, I think you're exactly right. And it is a legitimate question to ask. Is the solution that we've currently chosen going to be more damaging in the long run than the actual problem we're trying to solve? And, I think there's 2 different ways to look at it. There's a cognitive thought, and then there's an emotional thought. And the emotional thought is that, no one wants to see any loss of life or any illnesses spread. But the cognitive thought is, if you look at what impacts this is having, not only just the economy in Acadiana or Louisiana, but in this nation and truthfully in the world.
It's global, right?
It's global, absolutely. It is very, very damaging. My wife works in logistics and transportation and freight forwarding, and she's seeing the shutdown. She's seeing the shutdowns of ports and the flow of raw materials and finished products and those sorts of things. And all of those things are necessary to keep the economy in the world going. So I think we are at a point where we are going to have to rely on the intelligence and the ability of the individual to take the proper precautions and to be safe, and we've got to go back to work. And whether that's through strict guidelines on whether it's personal protection equipment for employees, screening of employees, those sorts of things, health screening of employees, which all of those things I don't think anybody would complain about having to do, as long as they can go back to work and start commerce again. Because it's drastically needed. I think one of the things, and again, I don't pretend to be a medical professional and nor a psychological professional, but I've been reading a lot lately, as we all have been, about these impacts. And there's also impacts of what this economic devastation can do, not just physically, but mentally to folks, and what that could potentially look like, even as far as loss of life and loss of health and those sorts of things. So we've got to go back to work. We've got to put the appropriate guidelines in place and get people back in the workplace, start this economy again. You look at what it's doing to the local economies, the municipalities across our region, and the shortfalls in sales tax revenues that they're having. When people aren't buying things, they're not paying sales tax. And they can't survive just on the sales tax of groceries. They need to be purchasing other things. They need to be selling cars and selling appliances and buying toys. And we need to get back to it.
I want to talk a little bit later in the show, Troy, about your specific thoughts on how we restart this economy and what those first few steps might look like. But let's talk about the impact that this COVID-19 has had on other aspects of the Acadiana economy. We talked about oil and gas. We know how devastating that has been. But you mentioned tourism. You mentioned other businesses, retail. It's been significant. Talk about it.
Absolutely. If you look at the decline in our hotel occupancy rates across the region, it's been devastating. They've dropped 300-400%, and they're down below where anything that they've seen in the past is a norm. Same thing about employments at our airport here in Lafayette. We've seen employments go from some 3,000 the first week of March, 3,000 employments in the first week of March to nearly less than 500 or so this past week. So we're seeing significant devastation to those industries. Restaurant industries, we're a culinary destination in this region. Everyone loves to come for Cajun food and the Cajun cuisine and the Creole cuisine, and those places are suffering. We've seen a lot of places that have done a really good job of pivoting their business and going to things like curbside and delivery, but that's killing the jobs. They don't need the wait staff there anymore, so it's damaging those folks. People don't have the disposable income right now to do what they've done in the past because our jobs have contracted. So we're seeing a lot of companies, I think, will come that will make it through this. They won't be whole when they get up the other side of it, but they'll at least survive because they've been able to show some ingenuity and to be, again, to use that word, resilient, and been able to make some changes within the way they do businesses. I'll give you a great example here locally in Lafayette, and actually they have a location in Baton Rouge as well, a company called Good Eats Kitchen. And Good Eats Kitchen does, they had retail locations where they did prepared meals, and you could go in and buy your prepared meal, go home and cook it, and eat your meal. Well, they're still doing those, but they started delivery service. They've also started a thing called Good Eats Market, where they're actually delivering groceries through their network. So they've been able to change their model. And Boyer DeReese, who owns the company, I talked with him recently, and he said exactly what I said a moment ago. Like, we'll get through this. We're not going to be whole, but we're doing everything we can to survive. And those companies that have that survival instinct and that ability to pivot and do what they need to do are going to make it through this. Unfortunately, some companies, some businesses aren't allowed the latitude to make those kind of changes, and it's going to be devastating because there'll be small businesses that we'll never see again.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Troy, I want to get into, number one, those steps that we might need to take to restart this economy, but I also want to talk a little bit about economic development and what you may or may not have been able to sustain as we've gone through this. We're visiting with Troy Wayman. He's the president and CEO of One Acadiana. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Tim Johnson here for the Louisiana Energy Export Association. LEA members are investing more than $60 billion in Louisiana's economy, creating more than 1,500 permanent jobs and 20,000 construction jobs. Louisiana is a global leader in energy export, and LEA is the voice of that industry. Check them out on their website to learn more.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Troy Wayman, President and CEO of One Acadiana, is our guest. Troy, times are difficult. There's not a lot of economic activity out there, as we've talked about in the first two segments of the show today. What level of economic development, because that's one of your primary responsibilities, obviously, what level of economic development are you guys able to sustain?
Well, we've had to make a few changes in the way we do things, especially the business recruitment side. The business retention and expansion side, we've still been calling on our existing industries. We've been conducting some surveys. We did one at the beginning of March, and we did one, and we did a follow-up. We're currently in it. It's going to end the end of next week to do kind of a follow-up. So we established a baseline on how this is impacting business, and now we're following it up. And finding out what businesses are needing, what help can we provide them to help them make it through this. On the business recruitment side, we actually still do have some activity. Some companies are, whether it'll come to fruition, but some companies are still looking. They're still doing some of the due diligence. They're just doing it in a very different way. We've had FaceTime and WebEx meetings with prospects where we've talked to them and done presentations for them. So it's been a little bit different, a little bit interesting. We're, especially as Southerners, we like to meet face to face. We like to have, we like to be with people. And so it's been an interesting way of doing business, but we have been able to conduct some business that way. Because I think some companies are they're actually taking this time to kind of look at what their long-term plans are. What are we going to do if we come out of this and everything goes back to normal? How are we going to, what are our plans then? And unfortunately, I think some of them are also looking at the worst case scenario. What do we do if we come out of this and we don't make it as a business? So we are still working that, but we've worked a lot with. We've always worked with our small businesses, but this has caused us or given us a great avenue to be of assistance to those small businesses in the region and a lot of the entrepreneurs in our region and the work that they've been doing, helping them navigate through some of the flurry of information as it relates to the CARES Act and those things that were put together in such a hurry, were needed, but were put together in such a hurry that people don't really, they're having a hard time navigating through the rules and guidelines. So we've made sure that we're studying up and we're as close to a subject matter expert as we can be, and at least have contact with those that are subject matter experts so that we can help folks either put them in contact with the right people or help them ourselves navigate through some of that.
Well, speaking of those small business assistance programs, as we sit here and tape on Tuesday, it seems that just this morning, the Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans have come together, at least preliminarily, on a new $500 billion stimulus package focused on small businesses. That's obviously good news. Now, eventually all this money is going to have to be paid back and recirculated in the economy. But you mentioned the assistance that you guys have provided. Troy, talk a little bit about this new potential packages out there, the demand for it in your region, and maybe some of the things that you guys will do additionally to assist those small businesses.
Well, one of the things that we did when the CARES Act came out initially, it was nearly 900 pages of legislation. We did what we could to condense it to something a little more digestible for small businesses, and we put together an economic recovery toolkit. So we reduced a lot of that down to about 15 pages of information. And then we actually have reduced it down even further and taken each one of those programs and put them into a kind of a choose your own adventure type thing where if you're this type of business, this is where I need to go. If you're this type of business, this is where I need to go, and it leads you down the correct path. And that's been extremely helpful to companies. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of that information has been changing daily. We get this information out, and then they run out of money for PPP. Well, this new legislation that thankfully they finally gotten together on, as you know, this is no time for partisanship. We've got to make sure we're acting in the best interest of this country, regardless at this point. So this is going to allow for some more money to be available on that. That money ran out very, very quickly in the initial round. So hopefully this will be able to provide more money to Louisiana and more money to our small businesses. This also, at this point, it helped a lot of our local banks who are responsible for these loans, these PPP loans. It helped them kind of learn the ropes, so to speak. So now I think they're in a better place to even better assist with the distribution of these new funds that are going to be available.
Yeah, I think that they can't come soon enough. I know a lot of businesses that have not been able to take advantage of that assistance yet, and I know that they're looking forward to doing it. We've got about a minute and a half left in the show, Troy. Let's talk about restarting the economy. Now, we've seen just this last week or so, the governor has announced a task force on restarting the economy. The legislature has announced its own task force on restarting the economy. I know that the folks that in local government in your region are thinking about what it might look like there. What are your thoughts on the specifics of the steps that need to be taken?
Yeah, we're obviously excited to see the governor's task force and the legislative task force that have been put together. We've been thinking about recovery for a long time on the local level and the regional level. The regional economic development organizations across the state, we've been talking at length about what that looks like for us, and we're consulting with our local businesses, with our membership, and the general consensus that we're getting is that it's time to go back to work. Right. We have to be safe, but it's time to go back to work. Now, do we ease into it, or do we rip the Band-Aid off and just jump right back into it? I don't know that we have a perfect answer to that. I do think that we're going to have to use the ease our way into it technique, just out of an abundance of caution. But it's time to start that process now. And, the governor released some of the restrictions on the medical industry lately, which is really a welcome sign. That's a good starting point. I think we need to do it across the board because the economy, it can't take much more of this.
That's right. About 10 seconds left, Troy. If folks want more information about the work that you guys are doing at One Acadiana, how do they find you?
Go to us at oneacadiana.org. That's oneacadiana.org. You can access our resource page there. You can access videos of all of our webinars that we've conducted, and we welcome you to come in and take advantage of any of the things that we have to offer.
Man, keep up the good work you and your team are doing in the Acadiana region. We'll check back in with you sometime soon. We're grateful for your support. That's a wrap, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.